for today's cup of coffee, I'm riding solo. Kids got some severe allergies going on. It feels like hell. So, yeah, I'm just going to do the best that I can by myself. It works better for me to have somebody to have a discussion with instead of doing like the empty chair syndrome, or it's a technique in psychiatry. Of course, in psychology, there's a lot of techniques in that field that's very dubious. But this one comes from Live Science by Nicoletta, Lanese, and was July 4th of 2022. I found this highly disturbing. And it's first synthetic mouse embryos, complete with beating hearts and brains, created with no sperm, eggs, or womb. Now, I think that should kind of concern everybody. It says, for the first time, scientists have created mouse embryos in the lab without using any eggs or sperm and watched them grow outside the womb. To achieve this feat, the researchers used only stem cells in a spinning device filled with shiny glass vials. And the breakthrough experiment, described in a report published August the 1st, 2022, in the journal Cell, took place in a specifically designed bioreactor that serves as an artificial womb for developing embryos. Within the device, embryos float in small beakers of nutrient-filled solution, and the beakers are all locked into a spinning cylinder that keeps them in constant motion. This movement simulates how blood and nutrients flow to the placenta. The device also replicates the atmospheric pressure of a mouse uterus, according to a statement from a Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, where the research was conducted. In a previous experiment described in the journal Nature of 2021, the team used this bioreactor to natural mouse embryos, which reached day 11 of development in the device. Jacob Hanna, an embryonic stem cell biologist at the Weizmann and senior author of both studies, told Stat News, quote, "That really showed that mammalian embryos can grow outside the uterus. It's not really patterning or sending signals to the embryo so much as providing nutritional support," end quote. After their initial success with natural embryos, the researchers wanted to try their hand at growing lab-made embryos in the mechanical womb. To do so, they applied a chemical treatment to mouse stem cells that reset them in a naive state from which they could morph into any type of cell, heart, liver, brain, or otherwise. In a fraction of these naive cells, the team applied additional treatments to switch on genes required to make the placenta, and in a third group of cells, they applied treatments to switch on the genes to make the yolk sac. The scientists then placed these three groups of stem cells into the artificial womb, and the cells soon came together to form clumps, but only about 50 out of 10,000 cellular clumps continued to develop into embryo-like structures, and those that did only survived in the bioreactor for 8.5 days. Over the course of those 8.5 days, or nearly half of a typical mouse pregnancy, the initial spherical embryos stretched out and became cylindrical, as would be expected of the natural embryos, Stat News reported. The beginnings of the central nervous system began to emerge by day 6 and soon gave rise to a brain. By day 8, the embryos had developed intestinal tracts and beating hearts that pushed blood stem cells through newly formed vessels. The shape of internal structures and gene structure in the synthetic embryos differed slightly from those found in natural mouse embryos. In following experiments, the researchers plan to study the chemical cues that push embryonic cells to become one type of tissue over another. Hannah stated, quote, "Our next challenge is to understand how stem cells know what to do, how they self-assemble into organs and find their way to their assigned spots inside an embryo. And because of our system, unlike a womb, is transparent, it may prove useful for modeling birth and implantation defects of human embryos," end quote. In addition to serving as a research model, the artificial womb could also someday serve as an incubator for cells, tissues, and organs grown for transplant procedures. Paul Teaser, a developmental biologist at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, who was not involved in the study, told Stat News, quote, we're crossing into the realm of being able to generate an embryo from scratch and potentially a living organism. It's been a really notable switch for the field, end quote. And says, of course, such research comes with heavy ethical considerations. Well, I would hope so. And let's see who this is. Alex Mesner, a stem cell biologist at the Max Planck Institute for Molecular Genetics, told the Washington Post, end quote, the mouse is a starting point for thinking about how one wants to approach this in humans. It's not necessary to be alarmed or raise any panic, but as we learn, it's important to have in parallel the discussion, how far do we want to take it, end quote. I think that should disturb everyone. Then one of the related articles came from March the 18th of 2021. And again, this was also by Nicoletta Lanese. And this is entitled, First Complete Models of a Human Embryo Made in a Lab. And it says scientists have created hollow spheres of cells that resemble human embryos in their earliest stages of development. One group, a research group, started with adult human skin cells, which they genetically reprogrammed to resemble embryonic cells. The researchers then gave these modified cells over a 3D scaffold that guided them into a spherical shape. The resulting structure closely mimicked a human blastocyst, a structure that typically contains a few hundred cells and forms roughly 4 days after a sperm cell fertilizes an egg and later implants in the uterine wall. The second research group began with human stem cells, including both embryonic stem cells and stem cells derived from adult skin tissue, and the team then treated the stem cells with specific chemicals known as growth factors to coax them into the shape of a blastocyst. Both teams demonstrated that their homemade blastocysts behaved similarly to real ones in that they formed as hollow spheres and contained 3 distinct cell types that eventually form different parts of the body as blastocysts do. Additionally, the spheres could implant into a plastic sheet which stood in for the human uterine wall. As of now, the International Society for Stem Cell Research, the ISSCR, has a guideline that places time limits on human embryo experiments in the lab, capping them at 14 days. This cap is intended to stop the embryo from maturing past a point where its cells begin differentiating into complete or complex structures. The ISSCR plans to issue updated guidelines on embryo-like structures such as these blastoids in May 2021. Now, some of the plans that were made in 2021 to change the guidelines included scrapping that 14-day period, which meant that these cells could mature into, for however long, into whatever. And some of the nations don't even follow these guidelines. This is not a worldwide standard. So we have no idea what's going on with this. It's probably about a year ago that we had reported about the guidelines about chimeras being changed. Chimeras are different species being mixed together, and that's very concerning. There are a lot of ethical concerns on all of this stuff. It's like, what is life? It's more than just cells, grouping together and forming something. When you've got something external used as a womb, we don't know what that's going to do. We have also reported on the artificial womb thing being a thing, and that's concerning. But as far as for somebody that has had 2 babies, that is there is a sacredness about that. And as far as the baby being able to regulate itself and its growth to the mother's heartbeat and the, swish of the amniotic fluid, there's all kinds of things, even as far as voices that they can hear in the womb. All that's going to be gone from this lab thing. So we have no idea. People be playing Frankenstein right now. And of course they be playing with a lot of things. It used to be called morality. It used to be called ethics. And there were people that tried to have some of them. But now the science has always pushed, and a lot of times they have pushed too far. Just because you can do a thing does not mean that you should do a thing, such as gain of function. I mean, who does that? Who thinks of something like that? And we have got some unspeakable evil going on our planet right now, unlike any other time that we're aware of. So within that, do we know what's going to be created? Whatever is created, it's not going to be natural. And I think it's interesting at a time where people are so worried about GMOs and stuff, but there are so many that are okay with this type of research. I mean, where are the people out protesting with signs and whatever it is that don't create artificial life? We're not even going to go into the transhumanist movement right now. So things to ponder. Not having kid to ride shotgun with me today. I miss that interaction. It's stuff like this that if we had the option of live chat or something, that would be great. Maybe someday. You never know. But the comments that you all make are usually so thoughtful and insightful, and I enjoy those. So, don't ever think, oh, I shouldn't put a comment. Now, if it's a negative comment, no, take it, keep it into yourself. But most of the people who do leave comments, and this is across all the platforms, which YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, all of you all have great insights, and I appreciate those. So feel free to have that discussion. I usually respond pretty quickly to the online comments, depending on what's blowing up in our world. So know that those are appreciated. If you've got experiences, or if you have experiences with paranormal, supernatural encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, if you have local, regional, or family myths or legends, send us an email, cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. And the links to the articles will be in the description box. Know that you're loved. If you need prayer, same email address. Send a prayer youngest kid's way, because he's feeling really, really crummy. So, Lord willing, we will see you all on the next cut. Bye.